Hello, beautiful. So good to be with you today. I want to bring you a really short and sweet episode today. This is super useful, but it's going to untangle something that I realized in writing my book is just massively confusing. So here it is. The word corporation is used differently depending on who's using it, right? So accountants, the government, the IRS specifically versus politicians, and lawyers all use corporation to mean a slightly different thing, right? And so it's no wonder that the number one question that I get when I have one-on-one consults with people at Sunlight Tax, the number one question I get is about LLCs and corporate structures, because people feel really confused about what an LLC is and isn't. So I realized as I was writing my book, I realized that I needed sort of an explainer on why this confusion exists. And so I wrote just a very quick little explainer section on corporation, the word corporation, and how it gets used by these different groups. And I think with this super short episode, you're going to really suddenly understand why you've been so confused and hopefully stop. All right. So here goes. I'm going to read you from my book and then maybe give you just a little bit of commentary to clarify some parts. Okay. So I do swear a little bit uh, in my book, not a ton. It's totally fine. But if you're listening with kids, I won't use the full F word, but it's in the title. All right. So here goes. The word corporation is effing confusing. I've noticed that the word corporation is used very differently by accountants versus lawyers versus the IRS. And I believe this is one of the sources of corporation confusion. Here's my take. When the IRS uses the word corporation, it's usually referring to only C corporations. To the IRS, this makes sense because C corporations are the only corporations that are taxed on their own tax return. All Schedule C businesses, S corporations, and partnerships pay taxes on their personal income tax returns. That is the definition, my friends, of a pass-through entity. C corporations are the only businesses that pay taxes on their own corporate tax return. So they have a corporate tax rate. So in other words, when you talk about a corporate tax rate, the only kind of corporation that applies to is a C corporation. That's what the IRS cares about. Likewise, when politicians talk about corporations and the corporate tax rate, they are also usually referring to only C corporations. Why? Because they are interacting with the IRS and changes to tax law. So they are often aligning with the IRS way of using the word corporation. And a lot of times they are making legislation that deals with the corporate tax rate. For example, I'm going off my script, off my book writing here for a second and giving you some commentary. But for example, in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was the tax cut program, the tax bill that was passed by the Republican legislature and President Trump, the first thing when he got into office, the one single biggest thing that was a part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was a cut to the corporate tax rate, okay? When we cut the corporate tax rate, that's not applying to you or me in our small businesses because we are not C corporations. The corporate tax rate applies only to C corporations, which are the only corporations which have a tax rate, right? You, if you have, a sole proprietorship, a single member LLC, an S Corp, a partnership, you don't have a corporate tax rate. You have your personal income tax rate, and that is how you pay your corporate taxes. They pass through to your personal income tax return. And that's what we say. That's what we mean when we call you a pass-through business, right? Most small businesses are pass-through businesses. So for example, when politicians were talking about the corporate tax rate, they only mean those big corporations, C corporations. So, anybody who's trading stock on a stock index globally or in the US, that's a C corporation, right? In order to be a publicly traded company, you must be a C corporation. So all of those guys are C corps. There are privately held C corporations as well, so they're not all traded publicly, but in general, they're big. Okay. All right. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. It was a large, permanent, dramatic tax cut for corporations, big ones. Okay. Back to my book. When accountants talk about corporations, they are usually referring to all of the separate tax entities. So that isn't just C corporations, but also S corporations and partnerships. The reason accountants think of it this way is because accountants are busy preparing the corporate tax returns of those entities and are under a March 15th deadline to get it all done, versus personal income tax returns, which are due April 15th. Your accountant will usually go out for a round of beers on March 16th to celebrate making it to the corporate tax deadline. That's what they call it. This is a huge part of their workload, and that's why they orient to that definition of a corporation. Lastly, lawyers, I think, and I'm not a lawyer, lawyers, I think, use the word corporation to refer to LLCs. And that's because to a lawyer, their work involves LLC formation. An LLC, by the way, is a limited liability corporation. And when you say that you incorporate, it is my understanding, and I want you to check this with your lawyer friends, but it's my understanding that when we say we incorporated, that means you formed an LLC, okay? So this makes sense. LLCs are a legal entity, and that's the relevant thing to a lawyer, which is funny because an LLC is literally the thing that's irrelevant to an accountant or the IRS. And here's my commentary. If you are a single member LLC, the IRS's word for that is a disregarded entity. So I'm not just being funny. The IRS really disregards LLCs. They have no bearing on your taxes whatsoever. And this is very confusing for people. An LLC is a legal entity, but it's not a tax entity. Okay. The tax entities are those other things I named: a C corporation, an S corporation, a partnership, or you can be self-employed, sole proprietor, or single member LLC, filing your taxes on a Schedule C. There is no difference between those last three things, right? Note that the single member LLC does not get you a new tax return. You stay on a Schedule C unless you also opt for a tax entity like an S Corp, right? You can be both an LLC and an S Corp. The LLC does not preclude any tax entity decisions. They are separate decisions, okay? Me, at my company, Sunlight Tax, Sunlight Tax is, I started out filing my taxes on a Schedule C when Sunlight Tax was small and did not make enough income for it to make sense for me to have an S Corp. I formed an LLC early on, and that did not change my taxes. All it did was give me some liability protection and a corporate structure. And then later, once I had enough income that it made sense, and this is the key decision metric of an S Corp, once I made enough profit that it actually saved me money, then I elected an S corporation formation. So I, in addition to my LLC, also have formed an S Corp. So I am both at the same time. This is not an either or question, okay? All right, getting back to my last paragraph in the book here. Keep in mind that this is my own personal assessment of these groups, but I hope you find it shed some light on the confusing word corporation. Now you'll understand that when you Google a question about corporations, the organization that's behind the answer, be it a lawyer, a bunch of lawyers or a bunch of accountants, a bunch of politicians, or the IRS, that organization behind the answer is going to determine which kind of corporation they're even talking about. All right. So I hope that that helps you understand why the word corporation is so confusing and which groups are using it to mean what. It is interesting to know, I think, that we do not all use the word corporation in the same way. When an accountant says it, It means something different from when the IRS says it, which means something different from when a politician says it, although those are the most similar. And the most different is how a lawyer uses the word corporation. So just keep that in mind as you seek out advice in the world, because it is such a source of confusion. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for listening. That was short and sweet. Last thing I want to tell you is that my program, of course, like I clarify all of this stuff inside it. I have a training, which I co-teach with an attorney, where we sort out all the places where tax and law overlap and what the meaning is of those legal structures versus those tax structures and some other stuff. And that's just one of the modules inside of my program, Money Bootcamp. Speaking of Money Bootcamp, I am getting into the season where I'm going to be talking about it more and inviting you to some free classes to learn some key skills that are inside the program and then learn about the program. And my first of the year is coming up. So if you're interested, I'm offering a free class called Make Taxes Easier and Stash an Extra $130K in Your Savings. And that class is going to be on September 25th. You are welcome to register. You'll get some reminder emails. But I'm really excited to offer this class again after, taking a break for a couple months. So the program will be opening up on the day that class opens. And if you are interested in registering, the class is free. It's really valuable. People really, really like the class. Whether or not you decide you want to join my program, it's a great class that teaches you about how compound interest works, how the math of saving for retirement in just by maxing out your IRA every year actually works. And it does. And it's nice, I think, for us visual people to see that laid out on a graph, because I think you can't believe it until you see it. At least that's how I am. So you're welcome to come to that class, learn that, learn some common myths about doing your taxes as a self-employed person, and just, get some help. So if you want to register for that class, you can go to go.sunlighttax.com/free to register, and you'll get some reminders to make sure that you show up on the day of the class. And I hope to see you there. Also, I will stick that link in the show notes as well. If you want to go to the show notes and register there, that's fine. But that URL again is go.sunlighttax.com/free. And I hope to see you in class. All right, thanks for joining me today. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm so grateful for that. This video is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.